Get the cream. Precious metals or the crypto things. Your bars are light like the one that's on a Smith machine. But my Maxwell and I ain't speaking about the pretty wings. Watch a potty mouth.
We are on the air. Welcome to our Sunday live stream. And we are already starting off with the X-Men versus Spider-Man stuff, which I was trying to... I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I came prepared. We're definitely going to talk about that because I love them both. But Spider-Man is on a different level for me. Maybe it's because of my appreciation for Spider-Man. But we're going to talk about Spider-Man, the animated series. We're going to do an appreciation stream, essentially, talking about the series and how much I love it. But we're also going to talk about the My Adventures with Superman, episode 1, which is on YouTube, actually. We're going to get into that. Oh, buddy, what a mixed bag that ended up being. I know there's a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about My Adventures with Superman. So I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm probably not going to watch the whole series, especially after what I saw in episode 1. But we're going to talk about it a little bit. We're going to talk about it a little bit. So we're gonna see what happens. Okay. Give everybody a minute to come in. Hopefully everybody had a really good weekend. Hopefully everybody enjoyed themselves at some point. You got rest and all sorts of other wonderful things. And now you're here. Maybe you've got to go to work tomorrow like I do. Maybe you got the day off. Who knows? But come in, kick back. Let's talk about Spider-Man and some comic book stuff. Try to avoid talking about whatever weirdo things that are going on Twitter. Oh, also, I was given a really good recommendation for Moon Knight, Volume 1, The Midnight Mission, by Jed MacKay and Alessandro Cappuccio, which is the newest Moon Knight series. And I just finished Volume 1, and it's very, very, very good. So we can talk about a little bit about that too if we got time. Which episodes am I doing? I'm really not going to do any episode in particular. Which you probably could, if we're being honest. Just to jump right into it, you could probably pick 1 or 2 episodes and really just talk about those. But really, I watched the entire first 4 seasons. I didn't even finish it. I haven't finished it yet. I haven't started. I started season 5, which starts with the wedding of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. But the series, it has a couple of missteps, but for the most part, it is the best depiction of Spider-Man in media. Period. Like, it's even better than the comic books, if we're being honest. Peter's not too old. He's also not too young. He's not too much of a dork. He's also not that far off model. He looks like an average Joe, but he's also kind of well-built, muscular. He has decent relationships with girls, but things also fall apart from time to time. It's a wonderful balance of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I just love Spider-Man the animated series. It is absolutely fantastic. It has an excellent characterization of the characters. Now, some of the characters they went a little soft on, you know, but it's a kid's show, so you have to take that into account. But they did kind of go a little soft on some of the characters, but we'll get there. All right, so I probably should have did with this what I did with like Naruto and all that stuff, which is basically look at episode after episode, you know. And that's basically put all the episodes together. Yes, WG Phil, I did see the Spot, and there was a reason why I thought the Spot was a younger character than he really was. It's because his depiction in the Spider-Man the animated series, for starters, it seemed like it was a one-off, even though he rippled throughout the rest of the season. he was pretty much a one-off character that if you have never seen that episode, which I probably have seen it, it's just memory hold it, he's not memorable at all. It's just, you know, he's one of those we gotta get the neogenic recombinator, one of those guys. I've seen a lot of Spider-Man series, some of the newer ones. I was a big fan of the what was that 3D thing they used to show on MTV, the Spider-Man series that was 3D or whatever. I was a big fan of that. The new Spectacular Spider-Man, I haven't watched a lot of that, but I've watched some of it. The difference between those and this seemed to be the dramatic, serialized, episodic nature of Spider-Man the Animated Series. And again, there are some missteps to it. But when you take into account that at some point, that's the probably the appropriate way to tell a Spider-Man story. You know, it's just very well done. Now, the MTV series, I liked it, but I don't remember much of it. I know it came out around the first time of the movie, I believe, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember when it came out, but it was like all 3D, and I haven't seen it in 20 some odd years. It's been 15 years or more since I've seen it. So I didn't go back and rewatch it, but of like animated series that really stuck in my mind that I watched even from childhood and maybe even rewatched them recently, X-Men and Spider-Man have been like the main two. And I've been looking at a little bit of Batman too. I'm going to go through Batman completely like I'm going through Spider-Man right now. I'm going to go through Batman again eventually, and maybe even Superman too. But I wanted to start with Spider-Man. I got X-Men on DVD. They never released Spider-Man, the animated series, on DVD, which is it was awful, by the way. It's awful that they don't. It's awful that they didn't ever put it on DVD. How disappointing did they? It was awful, man. Awful. I wanted that on DVD so badly. I loved Spider-Man as a kid. WG Phil says the Spectacular Spider-Man was a good retelling without doing the full origin. But the show got canceled around Disney buying Marvel and made Ultimate Spider-Man that had Drake Bell voicing him. So that's why the show got canceled. I didn't know that. I know it was very short. I figured that, MTV, they don't keep nothing for a long period of time. So I figured it was just one of those things where MTV had the license for a little while and then all of a sudden it just fell through. I wasn't thinking much about it. I didn't think that deeply into it. But it was a fine animated series. Especially at the time where it came across a little bit more updated. So, what do you need to know about Spider-Man the Animated Series? Okay, so John Semper Jr. is the writer of every episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series and ran for 5 seasons. And John Semper Jr. is black, believe it or not. A lot of people don't talk about that. He is black. And he wrote every episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series from 1994 until the show was canceled, I believe, in 1998, maybe. It had 65 episodes, executive produced by Avi Arad and Stan Lee. Supervising producer was Bob Richardson. And this was a tremendous effort, especially in terms of Marvel Comics and how successful it ended up being. WG Phillips, it says Spectacular Spider-Man was the animated series from 08 to 09. The MTV one was just a movie tie-in. Oh, okay. I was thinking about the MTV thing. I wasn't thinking about that exactly what you're talking about. There's been 100 Spider-Man cartoons. It's entirely possible. I got them all mixed up. But yeah, the MTV thing, that thing came and went. But There's a new one right now, isn't it? They got a Spectacular Spider-Man or something like that going on right now, don't they? I know it came out recently because they got like big bulky Venom and all this kind of stuff. I'll get around to it eventually, I guess, because sometimes I watch bits and pieces of these shows, but they don't really hook me, or I don't really care about the characters, and I just move on. Like Teen Titans, like I looked at a little bit of it. I really don't like the Teen Titans, so you're already behind the 8 ball on that. But I do like Raven, because I do have like Teen Titans comics, so I do like Raven. Starfire has an interesting story. Depending on what you do with Cyborg, he might be interesting. So you have an opportunity. I like the villains. I like Deathstroke specifically. So you get an opportunity with Teen Titans. If you got Deathstroke in it, I might pay attention. But I was not, big fan of Teen Titans, in and of itself. So I never watched the whole thing. Batman the Animated Series, pretty much I watched that all the way through as a kid. 9 times out of 10, though, I don't remember much of it because I haven't gone back and watched a lot of it. Same can be said for Superman and Justice League. But X-Men and Spider-Man have been the two things that, in recurring, I watch them pretty often. Spider-Man, this is the first time I watched Spider-Man all the way through in a long time, though. Usually I just go back and watch an episode here and there. But now this is like the first time I sat down and I binged the first 4 seasons of the show. And it's incredible. It's like really good. For a show that's made in 1994, which is almost 30 years ago now, it's remarkably good. It gets rough around season 3, because then some of the episodes start peeling back and Spider-Man isn't really the centerpiece, which is a positive and a negative. Specifically the story with Tahina, the young lady who really loves Spider-Man. It was interesting. It was a very heartwarming episode, but it seemed like a lot of things happened in that episode. It felt like a fever dream. Like a lot was going on. But that was like early in season 3. And I think there was another episode in season 3 too, where I was kind of like, what is going on? No, it was the 2 episodes starring Tahina and the cabbie. And then there was was it Rocket Racer or something like that, where the black kid with the skateboard. I was like, oh boy, this was something. That was something. Those 3 episodes were like not my favorite episodes of animated series Spider-Man, but most everything else was pretty good. WG Phil says the most recent Spider-Man was 2017 to 2020. Okay, so I think I know I think I know the series you're talking about then, because I just saw clips of a Spider-Man show I had never seen before, and he was fighting Venom, and he was outside, and I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know. I do know that they had a lot of animation problems with the MCU, and I know that they had a lot of animation problems recently anyway. Like the television shows for Marvel have not been that good. I know they had Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which I've tried to watch. I haven't gotten around to it. I heard a lot of people like it. Some people really don't like it. I'll probably get around to watch it eventually, But I like the Marvel anime joints too. Like when they put out those anime pieces, like the X-Men and Blade and Iron Man, and there was another one. There was a 4th one. What was the 4th one? There was Blade, Iron Man, X-Men, and there was another one. I got those 3 on DVD. There's a 4th one though that I don't have on DVD. What is that? It's a Marvel anime joint. A lot of people don't like the Marvel anime pieces, but I like those. Did I ever watch Batman Beyond? Batman Beyond was on as I was kind of growing out of watching cartoons. So it's definitely got to be something I got to go back and watch. Wolverine! And I do have Wolverine. So I have Wolverine, I have Blade, and I have X-Men. I don't have Iron Man. That's the one I don't have. Because Wolverine, that's where they had the extensive fights with like Omega Red and all that kind of stuff, right? Can we talk about MJ, Aunt? Jesus, I hated that woman. I want to talk about. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's start right there. Let's talk about Aunt May first, because I really like the characterization of Aunt May. Now, Aunt May as a character, she is, of course, an emotional anchor for Peter, but she hates Spider-Man. Like, she doesn't like Spider-Man. And you could tell she doesn't like Spider-Man because she watches the news. So, like, she watches the news, reads the newspaper, and makes her decisions based off that. So even when Peter is kind of like trying to cape for Spider-Man, she's like, "Oh, that awful Spider-Man. He's such an awful, awful man." She's a victim of J. Jonah Jameson's propaganda, and it's pretty fun. You know, it's pretty good. Now, Aunt May, I'm sorry, MJ's aunt, who doesn't like Peter, is very doesn't. It went from she really wanted to hook them up to she didn't even want them to get married. She didn't like the idea of them getting married. Oh boy, she's a piece of work, wasn't she? She was very angry when MJ went missing. She blamed Peter for MJ going missing. Now, let's talk about that. I don't want to jump too far ahead, because I do want to talk about the Green Goblin and all that kind of stuff. But how they got around some of the more violent aspects of the show, like, the Green Goblin, and like Blade and the Punisher, Kraven the Hunter. Either they turn Kraven the Hunter into sort of an anti-hero, where he's not a villain so as much as he's misunderstood in the animated series. Not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of them changing Kraven the Hunter, but okay. It was fine. It was fine. Like, he wasn't around enough for me to be annoyed by it, but I was like, man, Kraven could be so much more of a badass, But he comes across as kind of a simp in his first couple of appearances. You're like, ugh. He's all about this woman and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, all right, we're not gonna bat 1,000 on this one. So Kraven the Hunter being kind of simpy, I was like, all right, I'll take the L on that one. Blade. Now, Blade is a lot like Blade in the comics. He's pretty good. Not as violent, of course. Not like violent dumbass Blade. I can't wait to get there. But Blade, I liked that they brought Blade in. I think he's very important. I think it was very good, especially for that era, because Blade comics were still on the shelves at that point. I think the Night Stalkers was, because that's the character design they went with for Blade. They went for Night Stalker's Blade with the motorcycle and the black jacket. And now, it should be noted, Blade isn't always a vampire in the comics, okay? They went with Vampire Blade, which is the Blade everybody knows. Now, I forget when he became a vampire, but I'm pretty sure it was at some point during the Night Stalkers thing, because in the old Tomb of Dracula, throughout the entire 70s, Blade was not a vampire at all. And then 80s, 90s, it became kind of... He was also British back in those days. And then he became American and a vampire hunter, and he was obsessed with vampires, and he hates them. It was a lot like, how, the obsession that Eren has in Attack on Titan, with how much he hates Titans. It was almost like OCD level of I hate Titans, like a neurotic hate of Titans. That's kind of how Blade is depicted in like Night Stalkers, as he's like a foaming at the mouth, virulently anti-vampire. Hate vampires. And they toned it down, obviously, for this cartoon. So Blade is a little bit more tolerable in this cartoon. And then you get to the episode where he finds out his mom is a vampire. And all of a sudden he's like, Mommy, oh no, I've been looking all over for you. We're going to use the neogenic recombinator, which they used in every goddamn episode, to turn his mom into a human, and she tricked him. She tricked him. I thought that was good and bad. Like, I thought it was good because it humanized Blade, along with him having a love interest in the female police officer. It humanized him quite a bit. It was bad because we know Blade would have killed his mom if she was a vampire. Like, every iteration of Blade would have killed his mom as a vampire because Blade hates vampires, and once she became a vampire, she essentially stopped being his mom. So he would have killed her. But this is a children's show, so you can't have this guy staking his mom or anything like that. So okay, Blade. I'll take the L on that one too. I like the depiction of Blade. Um, uh, I like Blade, but him being tricked by his mom was a way of humanizing him, I guess. And plus, they wasn't going full-blown psycho Blade. Now, they also didn't go full-blown psycho with the Punisher. Now, the Punisher is a very, very interesting. The way he's depicted here is oh my goodness, the Punisher being essentially somewhat of a mercenary that's hired by MJ's aunt to find Mary Jane, which I actually liked. I liked the plot of that episode. The Punisher having a fucking homing missile inside of his van, though, was like psychotic. I'm like, oh shit. He's got a homing missile inside of a van? Like, and he's like, homing missile, blah, 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 blah. And the thing just, like, and he just, oh, like, what the hell? This dude is basically a high-tech bum. But, you know, that's an off and on thing with the Punisher. Like, they had microchip there, so you know what kind of version of the Punisher you're working with. But the Punisher having a lot of high-tech gadgets and stuff like that, that's an off and on thing, you know. Most people's favorite depictions of the Punisher, he is not using too many high-tech gadgets. He's using regular ammunition, you know, guns. Occasionally, he'll have a smoke bomb or some kind of chemical weapon. He ain't got a fucking rocket, though. You know, like, he had a turtle van outfitted with, like, machine guns and rocket launchers and stuff like that. Like, you know how much damage he could do with that kind of stuff? And he's not a psycho. Like, he comes across as being harder edged than most, but he's not a psychopath in the Spider-Man series. But he does see Spider-Man as a villain and tries to take him down and all that kind of stuff, which is fun. So the Punisher, take a little bit of the L on that one too. He's very toned down. So Kraven, the Punisher, and Blade, those characters are really nerfed. Even though the Punisher has probably more technology in that series than I've seen him in the version of the Punisher in a long time. Like, outside of maybe like the comic book where he got like the War Machine armor, they usually don't give Punisher access to too many weapons. WG Phil says, I like to see Blade in the Night Stalker outfit for the MCU interpretation. Good way to separate the Ali version from the Snipes. Yeah, bringing in the Night Stalkers in general, I think, is a good way of causing a division. Like, the Night Stalkers as an agency is fun. Like, I generally like those series. I don't know how you're gonna, like, they did work with like Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider. I don't know how you factor those characters in, or either if you would even want to, but I like the Night Stalkers. I think bringing them in could be fun. Making him part of a team, and then how the team came apart and all that kind of stuff could be fun too. He says, and you completely forget he made his debut in the Spider. I'm talking about the Punisher. Yeah, he made his debut in the Spider-Man comics for sure. Absolutely. I forget when that was. I think it was like in the mid '80s, late '80s. Yeah, or maybe the early '80s, one of the two. I know the Punisher was like a really high selling comic book when this cartoon came out, though. Like he was running like 2, 3 series at a time. Like the Punisher, they even had like the War Journal thing that he would do in his van, where he would like read to himself about what day it is and what he's supposed to be doing. That was very cool because that's the nature of what the Punisher was doing at the time. We'll get to Morbius in a few minutes. It says nobody or fans of the Blade comic, they were fans of the movie, and Marvel has never capitalized on making Blade interesting. That is absolutely true to a degree. Blade has always been more interesting in mediums not comic books, because Blade is a character that is limited to the horror side of Marvel. Like he's never really been integrated into the other side, the street level side of Marvel. He's always been in you're fighting werewolves, zombies, or monsters of some kind, you bring Blade in. And that's been about it. There's 100 different street level villains or whatever, or street level heroes that you just don't bring Blade in. You bring Blade in to fight vampires or otherworldly things. So that kind of hinders his popularity, but because they don't really deal with vampires that often in the Marvel universe, and to create a comic book in which all Blade does is kill vampires, I mean, that gets only interesting for so long. But I think Blade is a character that if you wanted to make him a side character in somebody else's book, you probably could do a really good job if you can make him. I don't understand. Not saying make him somebody's sidekick, but if he stays like visible in somebody else's series, he could actually be pretty good. Like how sometimes the Punisher will pop up in a Daredevil book, and he'll be there for a little while, usually as an antagonist. But if you were to do that with somebody like Blade, you could actually keep him interesting in the comics and actually give him more dynamics to his character. But again, it's a thing where they got him so artistically focused on vampires that really there's no point in using Blade at any other point in time. I think who was it? Who was writing? I think it might have been Reginald Hudlin was writing like Black Panther or something like that. When Luke Cage was like a Black Panther cheerleader, and then they tried to get all the black superheroes together, and Blade wasn't there, and they had to make some excuse of why Blade wasn't there. It's like of all the characters you chose not to bring in, you had Power Man, the new Power Man, the young kid Power Man, Luke Cage. You brought in Misty Knight. You brought in all of pretty much every black character. Riri Williams was there. Falcon was there. They had to come up with some excuse to why Blade wasn't there. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. How ridiculous. How ridiculous. But I get it. Not everybody reads the Blade comic books. And there's also going to be that interest, again, that weird thing where Blade is not a vampire in all of the comics. So that conflict of him fighting vampires while being a vampire doesn't exist. Especially if you go back to the time when he was created, he was throwing like wooden darts and stuff. He wasn't a vampire, and he was British, so it was like really weird, So they are about to put out a omnibus Blade series though. It's supposed to be coming out later this year, but I got Blade Black and White. It's a comic book series. It's his first couple of appearances, but only in black and white, which is to me a superior way of reading now that I've become a huge fan of manga. I also have another like floppy that has a lot of the early Blade stories in it, with him fighting like Dracula and stuff. It's fun, but it's not him as a vampire. I know a lot of people like the vampire version of Blade. So that's why I say you need to go with like the dark stalkers. I'm sorry, night stalkers. Dark stalkers is different. Okay. AJ3 says Blade's first appearance was in Tomb of Dracula. Yes, he was a human being hunting Dracula. He had he had an afro. His design was shit. Like the design of the Blade when he first came in wasn't very good, but the characterization was good. Him being British, I don't know why he was British, but he was British. I was just never going to get over that. He should have been like a Jamaican immigrant or something, you know. But I believe, if I'm trying to do this off memory now, I believe his origin was exactly the same. That his mom was killed by vampires while he was in the womb. Like his mom was bit by vampires while he was in the womb. And he hunts vampires from that day forward and all that kind of stuff. Like he was raised in a brothel, which is the origin story of like Richard Pryor and James Brown. So apparently Len Wein, who I think is the creator, is it Len Wein? It was shit. Google it for me. Marv Wolfman. There we go. Marv Wolf. There we go. He apparently knew a little bit about some black celebrities, because I think he was raised in a brothel by a bunch of whores before he was found and became a vampire hunter. But he had a cool like little girlfriend and stuff in that series, and it was nice. The little Tomb of Dracula thing before he got his own series. It was pretty good. Marv Wolfman created a lot of really good characters. Now that I think about it, that's why when I said Len Wein, I was like, that can't be right. I think he wrote it. He wrote some of it, but he wasn't the main creator. Who was the artist of Blade when he debuted? I should have this right in my hands, but I keep spinning this thing and now I can't find it. I got this little revolving thing. Oh, here it is. Blade, black and white. So Marv Wolfman, Tony DeZuniga, that's not right, because that's Vampire Tales. That's not Tomb of Dracula. So I gotta go find the other button. Gene Colan. There we go. Yeah. Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan. I knew it was people I knew. I don't know why I can't remember who created what. It's so long ago. Was I a fan of the Blade movies? The third one was awful. The two, the best one. I actually liked one better than any of them, if we're being honest. My favorite is one. I think it set the standard. One was tremendous. Just a tremendous action movie. Two was good, but I really got my rocks off one, and we all agree that 3 wasn't very good. 3 was not good. It sucked. It sucked ass. Noe Lara, I like how the 90s Spider-Man series handled the Eddie Brock saga. So yes, let's talk about Eddie Brock. I thought the introduction of Venom very early into the series, I think Venom appeared in the second season, or early or late in the first. It was one of the two. But Venom showed up pretty quickly. The Insidious 6 also showed up pretty quickly, or the Sinister 6. They showed up pretty quickly too. They got into some really big Spider-Man stories pretty quickly. I guess they figured the series wasn't going to be around that long, so they really got into like Venom and the Insidious 6 really quickly. But I liked Venom. I liked the Venom in the animated series. Eddie Brock, perpetual loser, getting embarrassed by Peter Parker. The symbiote suit is rejected by Spider-Man. Now, when things went off the rails for me in terms of Venom is when Dormammu and Doctor Strange got involved in the creation of Carnage. I was like, oh my God, this feels like it's way too much happening. Like it's a lot taking place here, because you've got Mary Jane is in a cult and she thinks she's listening to her dad, but it's Baron Mordo brainwashing her. Then Baron Mordo frees Venom, finds that Venom can't really be controlled. So then he gives a symbiote to Cletus Cassidy, who of course becomes Carnage. And now Carnage is an underling of Dormammu. And I was like, what the fuck? What is what? Who the fuck? For starters, Dormammu is in it. I'm like, why is Dormammu even in this series? Iron Man is in that series too. There's like a lot of characters just being like they had a character budget and they decided we're gonna splurge. Like this would I'm not sure if that was the best thing to do, but I it was interesting. I can tell you that much. Uh, you had Mary Jane jump into the dark dimension like fuck it, I'm going in, and I was like, what? Like you could tell like it probably didn't have that much in terms of understanding of Dormammu because you got Mary Jane. She just jumps in the dark dimension to face Dormammu, and he basically keeps trying to manipulate her instead of just destroying her outright. No, he didn't punch anybody on the show. He threw people. Like he would pick people up and throw them. Or he would web them up or something like that, but he didn't punch anybody. So at least not that I've seen so far. They toned the violence down quite a bit. In fact, the violence is almost non-existent, which makes the series very interesting because it's mostly dramatic. There's not a lot of action in the series. Like there's a lot of pumpkin bombs and stuff blowing up, but there is no punching and kicking or, sometimes somebody might get picked up and tossed. Like he tossed Blade's ass. He threw Wolverine too. He'll pick a guy up and throw them, but he didn't punch anybody. It's almost like the same thing with He-Man back in the 80s. Like there was not a lot of violence in that show. He-Man didn't punch anybody and didn't cut anybody or anything like that. So I don't know. Very interesting way of dealing with it though, by making it mostly like a soap opera. That actually helped quite a bit because it created stories for later on. No characters died, even if they got blown up, which is why I brought up earlier how they managed to deal with things like the Green Goblin. Like they had him get hit with his glider, but then he fell into another dimension, and he got lost in another dimension. So, okay, I'll take it. He's not dead, He's just lost in another dimension. Okay, okie dokie. That works out just fine. The episodes that featured Nick Fury, wasn't a big fan of that, but I did like the Chameleon episodes. Chameleon has almost no voice. Like he basically copies people, and when he talks, he uses their voice. But I think Chameleon was very cool in this thing, being very stealthy, and I like that. I didn't really like Nick Fury though. Nick Fury felt like the Punisher to me. They felt like they was almost like the same character, kind of. But Nick Fury was another character that was kind of big at the time. Like Nick Fury was a pretty decent character in terms of Marvel spy comics. Nick Fury and Captain America used to share a book. So putting him into the show, I'm not that surprised. So I mean, it is what it is. But he didn't do much in the Spider-Man series. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't pop up quite a bit in the Spider-Man series. It wasn't really necessary for S.H.I.E.L.D. to be there. But they did make it seem like it was a really good universe because all of the characters did pop up and show up eventually. WG Phil says, is it hard to adapt Gwen Stacy since she's kind of a hand-me-down girlfriend for Miles in future MCU films? Well, that depends on how they choose to utilize Gwen Stacy. Because Gwen Stacy is not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She hasn't appeared yet. So they could theoretically create Gwen Stacy specifically for Miles. She could be Miles's roommate or something, or whatever. Not roommate, but classmate or something. If that's what he wanted to do. Yeah, like why is Dormammu in this series? And they're in the dark dimension in this series. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like everything about that was like ludicrous, and that took me out of the show because I'm thinking to myself like, okay, we got Doctor Strange in this, it's already too much, you know. Okay, so we got Baron Mordo, we got Doctor Strange, and Dormammu was, he's conversing with Baron Mordo. That makes sense. But once we start saying that, okay, Mary Jane's going to jump into a portal and confront Dormammu in the dark dimension, I was like, come on, just get out of here with that, please. please stop this. Stop. You don't know enough about Dormammu. All right, let's should have picked somebody else. Just leave it to Baron Mordo. Okay, that would have been fine. But some of the cameos were not done that great. I don't think the Doctor Strange and Dormammu stuff was necessary. Iron Man, sure, because you want to bring in more technology, and you need to have like scientific characters introduce that stuff. So bringing Iron Man in made sense eventually, especially since Pete is a college student, and Tony Stark, is always looking for interns and offering scholarships, yada yada yada. You bring Iron Man in. They had War Machine in there. They didn't actually have Iron Man. They brought War Machine in, which is fine. I thought that was cool. Always, War Machine's a pretty cool character, so that worked out. But when they had like this jambalaya of Doctor Strange and Mordo and Dormammu and Iron Man, and I'm like, what? What? Ugh. And once you have like Dormammu in there, why not bring in Ghost Rider? Ghost Rider was huge at the time too. In the early '90s, Marvel horror comics were huge. Ghost Rider was big, which is why they ended up putting him in the Night Stalkers book, because, Night Stalkers needed somebody who could draw, and Ghost Rider was a big draw at the time. So they put him in that series. I don't think he was in there for long, but they put him in that series. Just like they occasionally would dump Wolverine into a series. Speaking of Wolverine, the X-Men, how they used the X-Men in the Spider-Man series, I thought it was okay. This is where early in the series where Pete, his body is changing, is mutating, and he grows 6 arms, which is very creepy. The body horror of him having 6 arms and all this kind of stuff. And he goes to the X-Men to try to figure out, what's going on with them, and the X-Men can't help him. And then he gets mad at the X-Men for not being able to help him. Then that leads to Wolverine chasing him down and him throwing Wolverine and all that kind of stuff. So the X-Men, they weren't used as much as you would think, considering I think they had a show running concurrently, I believe. Somebody might be able to correct me on that, but didn't X-Men and Spider-Man start around the same time? But they didn't do a lot of crossovers, so that was fine. The usage of Captain America. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Captain America cameo. Now, because I like how they used the character, but I wasn't a big fan of the cameo. Here's how they used Captain America. They were telling a story about Felicia's father, whose name I can't remember. Apparently, he's got a photographic memory, and he's a kid who snuck into like this U.S. government agency or whatever, and he spied on them to learn the secrets of how to build the super soldier serum. And he watched them create Captain America, and it came across like a little kid got into like a vat and then just transformed into Captain America. And no, his name was not Walter Hardy in the TV show. It was something else. The way they explained it is that the family changed their last name because he was a famous criminal or something like that, and he knew the secrets of how to rebuild the super soldier serum, so he was keeping them in prison or keeping them separate from everybody else. Yeah, he was the cat, but they gave him a different name in this show. I'm trying to remember what it was, and I can't remember it. But he stole the secrets of the super soldier serum. He was able to recreate it, and this creates Black Cat into Felicia. We'll get into that in a moment. But I was like, all right, we see the origin of Captain America, and it's just a cameo. He doesn't actually do anything. And I think that's what I didn't like about it. You know, I feel like Captain America is one of those characters that probably would have been very useful in terms of a mentor for Spider-Man. And that's one thing that I think they did right here, is they didn't, it's that too often, because Spider-Man is a young-ish character, they typically give him some kind of superhero mentor. Like they did in the MCU, where basically they made him Iron Man's young boy. It's like Spider-Man is not that young in this series. He's in college. But he still does have sort of mentor figures. They go to how him and Dr. Connors are, one of his mentors, and Dr. Otto Octavius is one of his mentors. They end up being goddamn villains. It would have been nice for him to have a mentor that wasn't a goddamn villain. That would have been useful. Captain America could have played that role, But I know that the story in which Spider-Man wanted to be an Avenger and he got turned down because he was too young. He was too old for that story in this series. He was college age. They would have took him into the Avengers at that point. But Captain America could have been used better. Wasn't a big fan of how they used Captain America. Iron Man was fine. They didn't actually bring Iron Man into the show, but he was there. X-Men started in 92. Okay, so it started 2 years before Spider-Man. All right. So, but it was still on the air because X-Men was on for a long time. So it was still on when Spider-Man started. So they were running concurrently, but I don't think it was probably for long. But it was a nice little usage of the X-Men in the series. Now I did like. I haven't gotten to the Clone Wars part yet. I just figured out today that they're going to start doing the Clone Saga in season 5, and I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to it at all. But I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna finish it. But I didn't know they did. I didn't know this ran long enough for Clone Saga to be used. In any event, Morbius. Michael Morbius is there's a lot of Michael Morbius in here. There may be too much Michael Morbius for this series. But Morbius was an interesting character because he's sort of tragic in so much as his he came in contact with Peter Parker's blood, and then he starts feeling like he's a superhero. And then all of a sudden he starts having the urges to steal people's plasma because they can't use the word blood, so they just start plasma. I need plasma. And then he becomes tragic and that he can't control this. And Blade's trying to kill him, which is right. You kill vampires, right? But Morbius is used a lot as a sympathetic character and as a romantic rival because, they have the thing with him and Felicia Hardy. And I think they also have this thing with Deb, again, I'm not a big fan of Morbius either. I really just don't like the character. And there was a lot of Michael Morbius in here. Now, it made sense to a degree, because you do have to have, like, part of the dramatic elements of the animated series is that Pete has to drop the bag on one of the girls and somebody else picks it up, He dropped the bag on Felicia. Michael Morbius picked it up. He drops the bag on Mary Jane. Harry Osborn picks it up. But then when they started having Morbius, I think Deb fell in love with Morbius, and she's dating Flash Thompson. So Flash is like this super cuck who's gonna help her help this guy that she loves. And I was like, ah, ah. I mean, it's a children's TV show. I shouldn't think about it that way. But as she, this episode is one of the later Morbius episodes where she's trying to figure out how to help Michael Morbius, and she's asking for Flash to help. And she's already told like Flash, like, oh, I have feelings for him. I love him. And Flash is like, oh, you care more about him than you care about me. And turns out that was true. And I'm like, damn, bro, that sucks. He still tried to help her. I guess that's true love, I guess. But the tragic nature of Michael Morbius is probably well utilized, but I don't really like Michael Morbius. I don't like it. I didn't watch the movie either. People have told me, I think some of you guys probably have told me to watch the movie. I'm never going to watch that movie. I don't like Morbius. So I don't see why anybody would watch that movie. I don't. I also was. Now, I want to talk about this. The Black Cat Morbius Spider-Man love triangle. It was an interesting one. It was actually more of a love square, actually more of a pentagon, if we're being honest. Felicia loves Morbius, but she also loves Spider-Man. She doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. She used to date Peter Parker. She left him for Michael Morbius. And then Morbius keeps trying to steal Spider-Man's powers, but he's also trying to fight being Michael Morbius. And then you had Spider-Man and Black Cat having their love thing, because Felicia is Black Cat and she loves Spider-Man, but she also loves Morbius. And I was like, this is too much. It's way too much. And for starters, it's too much Morbius. And I don't know why they like Morbius so much. They were trying very hard with him. And I was like, please just do something with this guy. Get him out of here. And then they finally decided, okay, here's how we're going to get rid of Michael Morbius. We're going to have Felicia, who was in episode 1. She was throughout the entire series. We're going to take her off the board by having her leave with Morbius and Blade. They're all going to leave. Blade's going to leave with them. And Morbius and Felicia are just going to follow. So I'm thinking, okay, so they're deciding to write Felicia out of the show, so they won't have to deal with the love triangle of Spider-Man, Mary Jane, and Felicia. All right, fine. But then Felicia's at the wedding. So she came back. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. There was a New Warriors coming that had a plasma sucking character. Oh goodness. It wasn't like Safe Space, was it? I don't know. But there was way too much Morbius in this series. There was way too much Morbius in this series. They could have dropped like half the Morbius plots and I would have been fine. Now, because he ties so heavily into Felicia's story, and there are some episodes where like most of season 4 is Black Cat Felicia stuff, but it felt earned. It wasn't like they just threw her in that spot. She had been there since episode 1. She was often in the mix of things without trying to be. She's Peter's girlfriend at some point when she's trying to date him. Then she's dating Morbius, and Morbius turns into a vampire. Then she starts dating a new guy. It turned out that guy's the Hobgoblin. So she's already in the milieu. And so when she starts getting superpowers of her own and she's doing Black Cat stuff, I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like she's thrust in the story unnecessarily. But I think once they made the decision to write her out, she should have been out, because the Black Cat stuff felt like it was the culmination of her angle. Like that's what she was going to do, is she was going to find a way to go help Morbius. and she didn't want Spider-Man's help. Okay, so Blade could help. He not necessarily wants to help, but he could. So we're gonna send Blade away, and we're gonna have these other two characters take off too. That could have worked, because it's a way of ending that love triangle in a happy way, even though it was kind of sad. But I think they felt maybe that Pete by himself was too much. But I think at that same time they returned Mary Jane, they brought her back, and then he unmasked to show Mary Jane who he was. So we didn't need Felicia anymore. She was not a love interest for Peter Parker anymore, and she wasn't a love interest for Spider-Man either, because she got her man back. So we didn't need Felicia in this show anymore. So I felt like everything that involved Felicia up to her leaving with Morbius was fine. Even though I didn't need Morbius, I was fine with when she left. I was like, okay, she's going to get her happily ever after. She's going to get her man. She's going to try to go find a way to help him. End of story. Nice seeing you again, but it didn't work. She came back. I was like, oh God, why did she come back? I always wonder why Ghost Rider never got his own cartoon since he was so popular. You would think that they would have put more effort into Ghost Rider and movies too, because he is a very cool character. But that character was dead the moment you made Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider. It was over. It's also a thing where Ghost Rider is another one that is entrenched in the horror side of Marvel. Any character that will have anything to do with the Darkhold is probably not going to be big for television. I know he was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That was like the one episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that I did bother to watch, is that when Ghost Rider showed up, because I wanted to see how they was going to utilize Ghost Rider, and they ended up using Robbie. They used the Robbie Ghost Rider, which I don't hate. He's the guy with the car, for those of you who don't know. The one that everybody hates because he drives a car. I like the demon car. It's different. There's a Ghost Rider who rides a horse. You can ride in a car. You can be Ghost Rider and ride in a car. Now, why is the car a demon? I don't know. Like his uncle's spirit or some shit lives in the car. I don't know what the hell is going on anymore. And he's not a proper Ghost Rider, which I also didn't like. If they'd have made him a proper Ghost Rider, I think Robbie would have been different. And people would have accepted it a little bit more, even with the car. But because I actually liked the Robbie character, he was the caretaker of his little brother who is, special needs or whatever. And, his brother is being bullied, and he lives in a specific neighborhood that's filled with like gangs and shit. And, when he finally gets the power, he's able to, liberate his neighborhood a little bit. Then they put him in the Avengers, and I was like, nope, mistake. Ghost Rider in the Avengers, that's a mistake. And then they gave him the penance stare when he's not a proper Ghost Rider. I was like, nope, that's another mistake. A big mistake. Then they made him the King of Hell, and I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? WG Phil says, unfortunately, due to the diversity push, it'll be Robbie Reyes and Johnny Blaze as a mentor, if anything. Why not Danny? Why not Johnny and Danny? And you can the Ghost Rider is a thing where you can have more than one, and each one of them have a different relationship to their various demon that is inhabiting their body. Or in Robbie's case, his car. At least I think the demon's in his car. I don't know. That's what the fuck. Maybe they've changed something, but I think the demon is in the car. I'm not sure how that works. It was some kind of. I'm pretty sure he didn't make the deal with Mephisto. It was thrust upon him. So whatever. But I personally like Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. That's personally my thing. Danny Ketch is okay, but I like Johnny Blaze. I like Robbie. I think Robbie has an interesting character. if they're going to do a Ghost Rider series, you can do all three of them. If we're being honest, I would suggest you probably start with Johnny as an introduction to the series and to the character, and then you could go with Danny Ketch. It gets kind of fuzzy, especially around the time where they're overlapping. Like the characters are going concurrently. Like Danny is Ghost Rider and Johnny is Ghost Rider, and they're on two separate sides of the planet or some shit. That was a bit much. That was a bit much, but and also it seemed to a degree like Danny and Johnny were almost kind of the same character. They're both well, Danny I think was a little bit darker maybe because Johnny Blaze hated being Ghost Rider. He's kind of tricked into being Ghost Rider. But I don't know. It's a very popular character, I think. Yeah, Johnny and Danny are brothers. That's really why the Ghost Rider thing, the new Ghost Rider series that they have currently going. That's Johnny, right? I haven't read it. I know Ed Brisson is writing it. I heard it was good. I struggle to. I really have to get people that I trust to tell me about these series before I pick them up and read them. But I think that the new Ghost Rider book is Johnny. So, but Johnny was the king of hell last time I checked. I don't know what's happened since. So I'm just gonna throw my hands up. It had something to do with Mephisto, and cause I know Angela was the king of hell too, and that didn't last very long. They just keep having Mephisto get overthrown. I don't know why. It says a Ghost Rider trilogy with Johnny the past, Danny the present, and Bobby the future. That's how it should be. I like the idea, I like all of them being cursed at the same time, just in different ways for different reasons. Just if you were to do that, I would start, of course, with Johnny in the past, and as he gets a little bit older, then you introduce Danny, and then, of course, you let that run for a little while. Then you introduce Robbie. But the problem with the Ghost Rider thing is two of the three versions of Ghost Rider that most people are familiar with, Johnny's the most popular version. So even though I think his book might have ran a little bit longer. Do I got that right? Danny Ketch was the Ghost Rider for most of the series, right? Let me think about that. I know he was the Ghost Rider for a long time though. I'm not sure if that was if what I'm thinking is correct, but I know he was the Ghost Rider for a long time. And they followed the Danny Ketch sort of adventures for a long time too. So I'm surprised, of course, Danny Ketch was not used in this series. I think he would have been Ghost Rider at the time. But weird stuff, right? You bring in Nick Fury, but not Ghost Rider. Okay. All right. Talked about Morbius and how much I hate Morbius. I can't stand it. All of the 90s animated versions with I figured that was going to be the case. I figured that was going to be the case. Not a big fan of Madam Web. I know I haven't finished the series yet, but Peter yelling at Madam Web was fun stuff. Her introducing all of these mystical elements and all this stuff. I am not a huge fan of Spider-Man going into extra dimensional stuff or mysticism of any sort. Him maybe partnering up with Doctor Strange for here and there, okay. But when we started doing fortune telling and the spider totem, I'm like, nope, I'm not interested. Just count me out when it comes to like the spider totem and all that shit. I don't want anything to do with that. I hate that. That's like one of that and the Clone Saga. This is my least favorite stuff about Spider-Man. Yes, I've seen the Blade anime and I liked it. I loved it. I think it was probably the best anime series that they did, was the Blade one. I didn't hate the X-Men one either. The Wolverine one, on the fence. But I liked the Blade one. I thought it was pretty good. They gave him that female sidekick for a little while just to kill her off, which was great. They would never do that today. And I think that made the series special. You know, they gave him somebody to care about, somebody to talk to. And that's always been a thing, like some of these terminally lonely characters like the Punisher and Blade, is they get so autistically focused on murdering and killing things that sometimes they do need a partner or somebody to be introduced so that the audience can, somebody that softens the character up a little bit. You know, like they're not going to burst into song and start laughing or anything like that. But you definitely need somebody for them to relate to because they're so violent, you know? So they did a good job in that anime series by, bringing in another character that softened Blade up a little bit and fleshed out his backstory. It's just, I thought it was good. Do you like Venom, Carnage, or all the other symbiote spawns? I don't find them interesting and don't even care for Venom that much anymore. What I find, and the Venom thing is a big issue. It's the same thing with the Clone Saga and all this kind of stuff. When you have too much of a good thing, Venom is a good character. You know, Carnage is essentially the Joker with the symbiote. After Carnage, we pretty much we're blowing it out of proportion. So now you have I think there's 10 different symbiote characters. I'm just like, no. And then they went and created, what was this? Null, the god of the symbiotes. So I'm like, oh, hell no. We just creating symbiotes all over the place now. It's like, bro, it's too much of a good thing. We went from having one cool character that was interesting, it had a reason to exist, had a good motivation, and then we had another character that was okay. At least this character looks cool. He's psychotic. He's a big boss. You're not gonna get any deep philosophical stuff with Carnage. But then we had to go and create all the other ones. And there's so many of them. I don't even want to start naming them off. There's just so many. I might even start forgetting. But I know that they started having the anti-venom. I'm just like, oh, nah, man. No. It's like the Green Lantern Corps now. Like Novas, Green Lanterns, Ghost Riders. Okay, you can do that, I guess. Because the power is external. So, and that's what they do. Since the power is external, anybody can get it. Anybody can be Iron Man because the power is external. If the power is internal, not everybody can do that. But since most Marvel heroes have external power sources, they can just multiply these characters over and over and over again. It could be 100 different Iron Man and 4 different Captain Americas, and it's like, oh, no. Black Santa 87 Symbiote God Null does have a cool character design. I think the character design works. I don't even dislike what Donny Cates tried to do with Null in the Venom series. I didn't hate that. I just feel like there's too many symbiotes. There's just too many of them. It's like there's too many spider people. It's too many radioactive spiders. How many fucking radioactive spiders could it possibly been? We already working into the realm of freak accidents. Freak accidents don't happen that many times. You're mass producing them. The reason why a lantern ring works is because there is an incentive to mass produce rings. Because if you're trying to protect a planet or a quadrant of the universe, you want to have as many people as possible. So you're going to manufacture these rings and dole them out to powerful, people to help. It doesn't make sense to manufacture symbiotes. It doesn't make sense to manufacture radioactive spider bit characters. Like, we don't need that many of them. Like, if something is a freak accident, it should be a freak accident. It's a freak accident that a guy got struck by lightning and became the Flash. What's the likelihood that it's going to happen again? You know what I'm saying? Like this, once you create something out of a freak accident, let the freak accident be what it is. Then they became all of these, everybody became a science experiment gone wrong in Marvel too. Machine blew up and I got superpowers now. Spot and Incredible Hulk. Everybody, that shit happens to everybody now. Dr. Octopus. Oh, the machine blew up. I can't explain it from that point, but somehow X landed on Y, and now I can control metal with my brain. I'm like, okay, sure, if you say so. Lethal, he says, how come Eddie Brock can manage the symbiote, but not Peter Parker? I don't like Flash Thompson as Agent Venom either. Do you like Agent Venom? I like Flash Thompson, and I think that as an opportunity to let Flash be the hero that he is in his heart, it was a good idea. I just wish they would have found another way of doing it instead of making him another symbiote character. No, typically I don't really like Agent Venom. But the difference between Eddie Brock and Peter Parker is supposed to be internal. Eddie Brock was jealous, vengeful, and he enjoyed the power that the symbiote brought. Peter Parker didn't like how the symbiote made him feel. He didn't like what the symbiote was bringing out of him, the aggression, the bitterness. He didn't like that. So he cast the symbiote out. But since Eddie Brock had that anger and that bitterness already, the symbiote just made him more powerful so that he can act on how he already felt. So that's the difference between, how they can handle the suit. It's like Eddie Brock wants that. He wants to be able to act out all of his violent fantasies of how much he hates Peter Parker and Spider-Man and all this kind of stuff. He wants to act that out, and the symbiote allows him to do so. While Peter Parker never wanted to do all that stuff. He didn't want that. So for him, it was something for him to reject. Noe Lara, did you enjoy the Black Cat episodes? I didn't enjoy the Mobius stuff. For the most part, yes. The stuff with her dad, I liked that. I didn't like, again, I didn't care for the whole how they use Captain America, but her being a useful character was well explained because now she's got the super soldier serum. She can transform into Black Cat. It's not she's wearing a wig. I was on the fence about that. I was on the fence about it being a transformation that she could just like power up like a Super Saiyan. But I was like, at least it explains, how Felicia Hardy can do all this stuff. It's because, she's got super soldier serum. I'm like, okay, we can explain how she can do all this stuff. Which, and she ends up being a science experiment too because of the Kingpin. And we ain't talked about the Kingpin. And I love the Kingpin in this series. I'm saving him really for last, if we be honest, of all the characters I want to talk about. Now let's talk about some of the villains because we haven't talked about a lot of the villains. Scorpion. I liked the depiction of Scorpion in this series. Scorpion is an idiot, so the way he was used in this series was fun. He's always been sort of a lovable loser kind of character. So it worked out. He's a perfect henchman. He's another one of these guys where a lot of Spider-Man villains, they can't take the suit off. Rhino can't take the suit off. Scorpion can't take the suit off. In this series, the Prowler couldn't take the suit off. So it was like, okay. But Scorpion is stronger than Spider-Man, but he's dumb. So I like Scorpion. He's sort of I actually liked later in the series when he comes back and he's got his little girlfriend. He's got for some reason, he's got the Vulture like handcuffed in his apartment. I was like, we just kidnapped this man. Didn't Hobgoblin get squashed by the Green Goblin in this series? Yes, later in the series, yeah. Hobgoblin was damn near nigh unbeatable in the early part of the series, though. Like, he was a badass when he was working for the Kingpin, and he kept flopping back and forth. But then when the Green Goblin came in, yeah, he got stomped. But I think that was useful because you had to put the Green Goblin over and separate the two. Once he got exposed as being Felicia's fiance, that was kind of it for him. But Hobgoblin was fun at first, basically just the epitome of greed. He, stab anybody in the back for money and or power or whatever. He came across like a really top tier character. And I know that the Hobgoblin was a top tier character for a long time in the comics. It was also some wishy-washy stuff about who the Hobgoblin was actually supposed to be in the comics. I don't know who he actually was in the comics, to be quite honest. But I know that it went a long time with nobody knowing who he was. But in the animated series, they did a really good job of having Oscorp supply all of his weapons. And he ended up turning on them to join the Kingpin, and then ended up turning on the Kingpin to join Oscorp. And he was just going back and forth and stealing various gadgets and trying to find ways of becoming the new Kingpin of crime. So he was kind of fun, and his reveal, which happened much later in the series, his reveal was at the end of season 3, I think. So he showed up, I believe, in season 1 or maybe season 2 as the Hobgoblin, but they didn't give you his origin or anything like that until season 3 or 4. So he was around for a while and lurking in the shadows and stuff. So that was good. LZ likes the Alistair Smythe Kingpin relationship. I wonder why Smythe isn't used in the shows or movies. I liked Smythe too. And he's one of the guys that I remembered a lot from the characters. Like, before you go back and watch it, he really stands out as a really good second in command or a really good henchman before he's turned into like that robot thing. That cyborg Smythe. But I liked him too. I thought he was cool. Yeah, Daredevil was really good here. They used him properly. Only issue I had was his voice. His voice was a little too deep. A little too deep. And he came across as kind of a cornball at the end where, Spider-Man, like, you can see through disguises. And he's like, I chose not to look because I respect people's privacy and the justice and the law. I was like, get the hell out of here. You beat up thugs. You beat up thugs. But considering Stan Lee created Daredevil as a knockoff of Spider-Man, I'm surprised they didn't use him more. But Daredevil was okay. He was in like 2 episodes of the series. Why they didn't bring in Daredevil when the Punisher was there, I don't know. That seemed like that would have been a good usage for that character. But I forgot Daredevil was even in this series until Nori Laura mentioned it. But yeah, I like Smythe too. I thought he was fine. Silvermane was another cool character. They turned him into a baby. They turned him into a baby, which is hilarious because you got his daughter carrying him around and giving him bottles, and he's making his daughter change his diaper. And you're like, oh my God. The old crime boss Silvermane, looking to become young again. He gets hit with this blah, 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 and it turns him into a baby. I was like, this is great. This is good shit. This is good comic book shit right here. And he still does not stop being a villain, even when he turned into a baby, which is great. And then he ends up hiring all the people that the Kingpin pissed off. So everybody who, so that'd be Scorpion, Smythe, there's somebody else too, but They basically just all start working for Silvermane because he pissed them. Kingpin pissed everybody off. AJ3 says Hydro Man is a swap out for Sandman, right? No. Hydro Man he was an interesting character in this series though. He's a guy who's obsessed with Mary Jane. You know, just wants Mary Jane to love him, but he's a broke bum. And he's like, I'm not a broke bum anymore. Look what I can do. His power set though, he should have been unbeatable. You know, the weakness that they put into him, where he has to be close to a water source. Okay. it's like the guy can create water. You have water in your body. That's the thing about, when Avatar, The Last Airbender, when they started doing that, right? You could do blood bending because you have water in your blood, right? So we knew that in '94, but we didn't want to overpower Hydro Man, right? We didn't want him like puppeteering people, right? But he was fine. I didn't hate it. See, I'm going to tell you to be honest, those are my favorite episodes with the Robbie Robertson episodes. The stuff between him and Tombstone is my favorite. That's one of my favorite episodes. Legit. And that was a really good barometer of John Semper being the writer and being a black man, is he avoided the race question when it comes to Robbie and Tombstone. When you see their relationship, you see that it's a choice. Lincoln is a dickhead and a thief. It's like he's a thief. He was that way before he became Tombstone. He just got worse as Tombstone. And I think that was a really good story that he decided to tell, that series of stories about Robbie and Tombstone and Robbie's son, because it shows how necessary your father's attention is to you. Because you get Robbie's son is not, he's a bit of a knucklehead, but he's not a bad kid. He's just he's running with a bad crowd. He's trying to get his dad's attention. And he's not getting that attention from his dad. So he starts getting it from Tombstone and all the Tombstone's, circle of knuckleheads. And I just thought that it told the story perfectly in a way that makes sense, and I really liked the stuff with Robbie and Tombstone. I thought that was excellent. That was very good storytelling. I like the Prowler episode too, with the Hobie Brown Prowler. That was very good as well. The guy down on his luck, girlfriend wants him to go straight. He's like, no, we need money. We need this. We need that. He ends up going to jail, meets Kingpin's son, helps him out in a brawl or whatever. And as reward, the Kingpin gets him out of prison, then gives him the Prowler suit. And then, of course, because it's the Kingpin, he actually controls the Prowler suit. So that was fun. The Rocket Racer stuff was okay too. It was okay. Not my favorite episode, the Rocket Racer episode, but it was all right. I think that's the episode where Spider-Man got the lecture about how he doesn't come to that part of town. I was like, you sure about that? You sure about that? But it was fine. The only problem I had with Hobie Brown Prowler is his design was too close to Blade, and it made the characters almost indistinguishable. They had the same haircut and same facial and stuff. They'd have changed up the look of that character a little bit more. I think it would have been dope. But with the high top and all that kind of stuff, it made them look a lot like Blade. But they did a good job with the Prowler too, even though that episode was pretty much almost totally about Prowler. I haven't gotten to season 5 yet, so I can't really evaluate how they handled the Clone Saga in the animated series, because I haven't really started season 5. I think I just watched one episode, so I haven't got all the way through it yet. But Hobie Brown was fine too. That was another episode where Spider-Man took a back seat, and it was mostly a Prowler episode. What else? What else do we got here? Oh, everything that involved the Green Goblin was great. You know, Osborn losing his mind, becoming the Green Goblin, him finding out Peter was the Green Goblin. And it was crazy. Like, he figured it out in one of the simplest ways possible, by just hanging around on top of a building, watching Peter change clothes. Like, nothing too extravagant. He just watched. He just shadowed him a little bit and saw him change. And I liked the episode. He was like, my greatest nemesis? It's like, stupid kid. And then he gets that's my son's friend Peter. And then, Green Goblin takes over from that point. I like that. He invites him over for dinner because he's going to expose that he's Spider-Man. So he threw the web cartridges in the he threw the web cartridges in the fireplace to smoke everybody out, so that Osborn wouldn't out him as the Green Goblin. Out him as Spider-Man. But I like that. The Goblin War episode was one of my favorites. That's where the Green Goblin and the Hobgoblin they go at each other. This is where the Hobgoblin is exposed as Felicia's fiance, and destroys her world and destroys her life before he finally decides he's going to kidnap Mary Jane and gets knocked into another dimension. So there that goes. But the Harry Osborn Green Goblin, that was fun too. They did a decent job. They didn't really explain why Harry had the Goblin power. Like, I don't think they explained how the Green Goblin can talk to Harry. Like, they didn't really go into that. But I like the story, because the story that they built up to Harry Osborn taking over as the Green Goblin, they told that story leading up to it. Whereas a lot of it is personal animosity towards Peter Parker. And that's one thing that is a recurring theme throughout the series and throughout Spider-Man in general, is people don't like Peter. Eddie Brock doesn't like Peter. So that personal bitterness, that personal dislike translates over to Venom. Flash Thompson doesn't like Peter, but he loves Spider-Man. He's like a really big fan of Spider-Man. And that translates into him being like Agent Venom and wanting to be a superhero and all that kind of stuff. But Harry Osborn thinks that, Peter Parker stole his girlfriend and Spider-Man killed his dad. So when he figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, he realizes, oh my God, my best friend stole my girlfriend and killed my father. I'm going to kill him. He starts having this dissociation that turns him into the Green Goblin. It's fun. I also think he was the Green Goblin differently than Norman. He wasn't as crazy as Norman. Having Liz Allen step up and say, but I love you. And that was the reason that he didn't pumpkin bomb the wedding like he planned to do. Like, he planned to kill everybody with a pumpkin bomb. And then Liz Allen was like, I love you, Harry. You love me? Oh, my head. I need to go lay down. You can't hand the pumpkin bomb off. I'm like, oh, please. Get out of here. Girl we barely see on the show falls in love with Harry, and he decides he's not going to pumpkin bomb the wedding anymore. Weren't you pissed about this not too long ago? No, in the animated series, they never mentioned at all about Chameleon and Kraven being related. Harry popped up with an army of robots to crash the wedding, bro. That shit was raw. It was raw, man. He popped out of nowhere. Just came out of nowhere. He got an army of robots. There's shit blowing up. I'm like, oh my God, bro. Like, this wedding is crazy. This wedding is nuts. And he almost forced Mary Jane to marry him. He's running around without his mask on. It was great. It was truly fantastic television. No mask. He's just doing stuff. And he was gonna pumpkin bomb the wedding though, like, and decided not to because of Liz Allen, who he probably talked to like 4 times throughout the entire series. She doesn't play a big role in this series at all. So he's like, "Oh, my head." I was like, "Oh, stop, stop." I like that wedding though. That wedding was dope. He was about to kill everybody at the wedding though. It was also fun that J. Jonah Jameson and the Kingpin were both trying to impress Peter by giving him expensive wedding gifts to get him to come work for them. You know, now the Kingpin has bought a newspaper. It's like he's an upstanding citizen or something. Yeah, right. So that was fun. Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin didn't last long, but it was fun. I like the build up, to the character essentially snapping and him finding Pete's um, Spider-Man costume in his room. That sent him over the edge. He was like, you know what? Fuck Pete. We about to mess everything up, bro. We about to go build an army of robots and crash this here wedding. And I'm gonna force Mary Jane to marry me. I'm like, bro, that's nuts. That's nuts. That'll never work. Oh shit. Put that in there. Have you heard about Donald Glover working on a Spider-Man anti-hero movie focusing on the B-list villain Hypno Hustler? Pretty soon, all of Spider-Man's rogue gallery will become anti-heroes. How unfortunate. I hunger for plasma. I hate that. I don't know. Why wouldn't just there's some characters in the Spider-Man universe, I guess you could spin off to make their own series. Hypno Hustler, why wouldn't he's not even a B-list villain. Scorpion is a B-list villain. Hypno Hustler does not rank with Scorpion. Vulture is a B-list villain. He doesn't rank with them. I don't know why you would do that. They're doing it just for Donald Glover, I would imagine. Yeah, the writers are on strike, so they're not making anything right now. The Secret Wars adaptation was my favorite part of the show. When they did now in the comics, Venom comes from Secret Wars. I don't believe that's the same thing in the show. Because I don't remember Peter being taken off the planet anywhere. I'm trying to remember. I remember J. Jonah Jameson's son, astronaut, and he went to whatever planet, the moon or whatever, and the symbiote came back with him. I don't think they adapted the Secret. Now maybe they adapted Secret Wars in season 5. But I don't remember it being in the early part of the show. I don't remember seeing Secret Wars. So that's how, unless I wasn't paying attention and I was watching it and just, eating cereal and not paying attention to what was going on. The Spot, he has a little bit more charisma in the show than I would have expected. I think they did a good job with him, though. He's more of an anti-hero, too. He turned into a villain in order to make money to build his own lab because he didn't want to work for the Kingpin anymore. And everybody worked for the Kingpin, goddammit. People keep forgetting the Kingpin is a Spider-Man villain. He's more of a Daredevil villain nowadays, but he started out as a Spider-Man villain. Is there anybody else? Chameleon was fun in the series. Of course, he doesn't say anything. He just does cool stuff and confuses people, which is great. Yeah, Secret Wars is part of. I haven't gotten there yet. I watched the first 4 seasons. I haven't watched season 5 yet. I like the human relationships of the show. Everybody has a love interest, or they have a friend, or something, and that helps, tell the story as the character transitions from one phase of life to another. When you have those relationships, it really helps. The The Sinister Six I thought was fun. They had them brought in by the Kingpin, which works. Um, so I thought that was cool. I just didn't like that it happened so quickly. I know the Sinister Six was a longer story arc in the comics than it was in the show, but they didn't really put forth the effort. I love Doctor Octopus. That's my favorite Spider-Man villain. Um, when they utilized Doctor Octopus in that crazy episode with the dying girl, I was like, oh my goodness, why Doctor Octopus? Why? Why did Doctor Octopus be defeated by a girl, a little girl? Why? Of all the villains, you could have picked any one of Spider-Man's villains to get defeated by the girl, and it was Doctor Octopus. That sucks. Vulture was cool. Him having the power to steal people's youth. That's something that really stuck with me as a kid. You know, in terms of a villain's, power set, the ability to steal youth was crazy to me. Him having some kind of sacred, item that he got from Silvermane, that was stolen from Silvermane, I should say, and given to him and made him young again, was very cool. He doesn't play a huge role in the show after he gets kidnapped by Scorpion and all that kind of stuff, but it's fine. he was literally handcuffed in Scorpion's cramped ass apartment. Another thing is hilarious that Scorpion decides to dress like a detective with that gigantic scorpion's tail. Like he's got the duster on with the little hat and everything. he's wearing a jacket over his suit. He's got a hat over his mask and everything. It's ridiculous, bro. But it was great. That's good comic book shit right there. Electro being related to Red Skull, that shocked to me. Shocked. I see what you did there. The Shocker was in this joint too. He's a bit player though, which is usual because the Shocker's never really been that big of a deal. The best part of the Shocker, of course, is when he was running from Spider-Man, Black Suit Spider-Man. He's about to get killed. Get back here, Shocker! Running away, trying to get the hell out of there. Yeah, he had to. I'm glad they need to redesign Electro. His outfits suck. I like that the villains constantly switch sides. The villains are just, they have almost no loyalty to one another. They constantly stabbing each other in the back and flipping on each other. Mysterio is fun in this episode, in this show too. Mysterio is really fun. Mysterio is more dangerous of a villain than most people are willing to give him credit for. He's more of a joke villain, but then they'll occasionally do something that turns Mysterio into one of the baddest son of a bitches in the entire Marvel universe. Like, after you read what he did to Daredevil and what he did to Wolverine, you would not sleep on Mysterio as a villain anymore. Like, him tricking Wolverine into killing the entire X-Men team and Old Man Logan is nuts. And he's a B-level villain, but properly applied and motivated. He tricked Wolverine into murdering all of the X-Men. He tricked Daredevil into almost throwing a baby off of a roof. That was a really good story too. Kevin Smith, I think, wrote that. The Mysterio, basically it was Craven's last hunt from Mysterio, where he wanted to go out with a bang. He had like cancer or something like that, and he wanted to finally defeat a superhero, so he decided to defeat Daredevil since he couldn't beat Spider-Man. But a lot of it is because he can cause these illusions, and he has ways of manipulating your senses, and that can make him more than like a complete goof villain. Like, he already has a gigantic fishbowl on his head, so that makes him a laughing stock. But you could always do cool stuff with Mysterio and make some fun. They didn't last long with the Mysterio tries to be a hero thing, which is legit. Like, that's a big part of Mysterio's character. He wanted to be a superhero. But he wanted to be a villain, but he wanted to lie to everybody about being a hero. They went hard with that in the movie, which I thought was fine. But in the animated show, they basically very quickly found out that Mysterio was full of shit. A little too quickly. But, it was fine. How did you like Silver Sable in the series? I think Mysterio and Riddler are insofar the goofy villains that could be lethal if written to be. Yeah, the part of the Riddler is making him dangerous. Like, if his riddles are connected to like bombs or stuff like that, that could be cool. But Riddler is, in general, is his lethality, his level of lethality is down, especially in comparison to Joker or somebody like that. And he's not like a typical crime boss like Penguin or Black Mask or anything like that. He's a gimmick villain, and Mysterio is a gimmick villain too. But Mysterio has powers, quote unquote, where it's all gadgets, but it's powers essentially. It's gadgets that he made. You Silver Sable, I haven't gotten there in the series yet. I think she probably pops up in season 5. As far as Silver Sable as a character, I don't know. I don't know that much about her. I think I have a couple of series from Silver Sable. She seems like a pretty generic mercenary type of character. But that's about it. The Kingpin, however, is the star of the animated series. Kingpin fucking rules, man. He is constantly pulling everybody's strings. He is a part of so many of the plots in the series, and he's the reason why so much of this stuff happens. He's a huge part of the Hobgoblin story, the Smythe story, the Silvermane stuff. He's the reason the Black Cat exists, the reason that the Shocker exists, the reason that the Spot exists. Like he is a villain. He put together the Insidious Six. The voice acting of Kingpin is phenomenal. The characterization of the Kingpin is phenomenal. Everything about him is just, mwah. I love the Kingpin in this series. It's really good. And the fact that Spider-Man hasn't gone like head up with the Kingpin yet in the series, and it's like 3 seasons in, I think they probably had only like a handful of like those two in the same room. Usually they find out we know that the Kingpin is behind something. Spider-Man figures it out later. Like Kingpin was behind, the Spot or behind the Prowler or something like that. He's been funding the Hobgoblin or some nonsense like that. Why is it called the Insidious Six when Mr. Sinister kept his name? Well, it's called the Sinister Six in the comics. I think it's called the Sinister Six. Let me see. I just happen to have the books within arm's reach. I don't know. Let's see. Look on the back here. What's it called? They're called the the Sinister Six. I don't know. But they're called the Sinister Six in the comic book. In the original run, like the Stan Lee Ditko stuff, is called the Sinister Six. So whoever created Mr. Sinister, they just decided, okay, we're gonna. But they didn't. They're more of a recurring batch of villains more than anything. Kingpin just being fat in general is fucking hilarious to me. And then you find out later that it's not fat. It's 350 pounds of muscle. Like so he's basically like a gigantic sumo wrestler. So that's the wonderful thing about that guy, man. He rules. He kicks ass. So that was real fun to turn around and be able to do something like that. But I like that he uses mostly his mind and his finances or whatever to control people. Like that's the fun thing about the Kingpin. He's a heavily manipulative character. Like he's a physical marvel too. Like he could literally, beat your ass, but he would prefer to ruin your life. Like he would prefer to strip you of everything and ruin your life. But he could kill you if he wanted to. It wouldn't have been no problem. But he preferred to ruin your life, and you'll live, but you know, the question will be, what's the point of living when you ain't got nothing? So I love the Spider-Man series. In comparison to the X-Men, I would actually prefer Spider-Man. Um, the X-Men series, I think, did a better job with the characters, though. Again, they went a little soft on some of the characters in Spider-Man, where in the X-Men, Apocalypse alone is worth the price of admission. Like the Apocalypse and Kingpin. If you was to put those two characters and which one had a better adaptation, it would be neck and neck. Uh, just the dialogue that they wrote for Apocalypse is next level. We'll probably do X-Men next week because it was so fucking good. But well, probably not next week, probably next month. Let's put it like that. Let's do it in August. Give me a chance to sit down and finish this and watch X-Men again. Then I'll probably do Batman after that. Unless I do Batman first. I have whims. This Spider-Man thing is a whim where I decided to just watch all of this stuff at once. But the usage of the characters in Spider-Man is very good, and the soap opera nature of Spider-Man is very good. It's the episodic nature of it is so good. In X-Men, a lot of the characters are very cool, and the usage of a lot of the characters are very cool, and the storyline is also very good. And how they adapted some of the series, like the Dark Phoenix saga, it's top notch. Like, and that's really where I kind of felt like, all right, Spider-Man's got that kind of stuff too, like the Venom saga and Carnage and the Insidious Six. The Sinister Six. We had some really good stuff with Spider-Man too that they kind of cramped down to one episode, while like the Dark Phoenix saga got a chance to breathe, you know. But I still prefer Spider-Man. I love X-Men though. X-Men is tremendous. They're 1A and 1B in terms of animated series for me. You know, I'll probably end up having to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles again by the end of this year, and I'm pretty sure that'll be on the list too. But Spider-Man and X-Men, man, what special cartoons those were when I was a kid. But X-Men, the Cable stuff, because I really love Cable. Anything that involved Gambit flirting with Rogue was top notch good shit. And I can't think of. I think X-Men got weak near the end. It got really weak. But the strong suit of the X-Men series is there are so many characters to play off of, and so many characters to play with, and then so many, of course, angles for you to work with. So I can see why people would think X-Men is the best, but I will go with Spider-Man personally. So, Mongo, watch the latest Disney Spider-Man cartoon where everybody is a spider person. It's the drizzling shits. I will not. I will prefer to watch good things rather than bad things. Ethelzy says, do you think we'll ever get a movie or TV adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt? Probably not, because Kraven wins. For most of Kraven's Last Hunt, he wins. And then he commits suicide. So probably not. I don't think so. That's dark. Him committing suicide is dark. That's dark stuff, man. That's real dark. I don't think they're going to do that. That Kraven the Hunter movie, though, going to be terrible. He got bit by a radioactive lion, and now he's PETA's best friend. Like, oh my God, get the fuck out of here. He loves animals now. He doesn't hunt them. He hunts the real animal, which is man. Bro, if you don't get this horse shit out of here, man. Kraven the Hunter. Really cool character. One of my favorite characters. And they turned him into a walking billboard for PETA. Sure. If you say so. If you say so. I don't know, man. I don't understand why it has to be that way. In the book, thankfully I got it in my hand. This is Leon Ditko's Spider-Man. They have a conversation between Craven and Chameleon. This Chameleon doesn't have a face. Uh, he doesn't have a face. He's not a real person. But they don't mention them being brothers in here. In fact, he said he calls Chameleon his friend because they're working together to try to capture Spider-Man. But that must have came out a little bit later that they're related. And it didn't come from the original series. But yeah, Uncle Ben really died in the comics, and Gwen Stacy did too. She didn't come back, but she came back in an alternate universe, which I guess doesn't count. But in terms of watching things that I don't like, My Adventures with Superman. Let's spend a couple of minutes on this before I leave. How many of you watched the My Adventures with Superman, at least the first episode? Give you guys an opportunity to admit that you watched this show before I start talking about it. If you haven't watched the show, we're still going to talk about it. But, oh my goodness gracious. My Adventures with Superman. That's the brand new Superman animated series that will be airing on Adult Swim and HBO, not HBO Max, Hulu, if I remember correctly. I think they released the first 2 episodes, and I only watched the first one. I saw the Sailor Moon like transformation for Superman and said to myself, there is no way I'm watching that series. There is no way I'm watching that series. There is no way I'm watching that series. But then I got bored and I said, episode 1 is on YouTube. And I said, okay, I will watch episode 1. That's what I will watch. So because you can watch episode 1 for free, I watched the first episode of My Adventures with Superman. So here's my thoughts. For starters, the animation has a very fake anime look. Big round eyes for the characters. They have anime haircuts and anime hairdos. The voice actors are, oh my goodness. The voice acting, I was less than enthused with the voice acting because it sounded like soy boys were doing the voices of the characters. And I don't really want a soy-based Superman. I'm just not really a big fan of that. Second, Superman seems to be a transformation that Clark goes through. Now they didn't do the Sailor Moon Superman transformation in the first episode. What happens is very, very early, like in the first scene or two, young Clark is trying to get his kite from a tree. He can't reach it. A woman is speeding down the street, distracted by her baby in the backseat crying or whatever. And she hits a pothole or something like that, and she's spinning out of control. He starts running to try to go help, and then his eyes start glowing, and he snaps and flies over there and is able to stop the car. And then this happens again later on when him and Lois and Jimmy Olsen stumble across a bunch of robots, and he starts trying to fight the robots, and he snaps and Superman power comes in, and he punches the robot or whatever. So it's not like he has these powers and he's learning how to control them. Basically, he has to tap into himself, where he's basically like, what's going on? How is this happening? He doesn't know who he is. So the animation is very soft, very, very soft. Clark is huge. Like he's a big muscled guy. Like not, definition in the stomach and all that kind of, but just kind of big and wide. So he's kind of a gentle giant. His character is very anxious and very awkward. He's always worried about tearing stuff up or destroying things, and he doesn't know how to talk to girls. He doesn't know how to talk to people in general. He's not quite sure of himself. He's a dork. That's pretty much his gimmick. Lois is for some reason very brown skinned in this show. She might not be brown enough, but she's very brown. She's ambitious, always pushing forward. She drags Jimmy Olsen and Clark along on this adventure, even though they don't want to go, and even though their boss, who's black, tells them not to go. They really went Burger King Kids Club with this thing because Jimmy Olsen has been race swapped to being black. He is a conspiracy theorist. He's also superstitious. Basically, he's the black best friend archetype. Some people have said that he's effeminate. I don't say. I would say I didn't see that in episode 1. I didn't see that he was effeminate in episode 1. But the animation makes everybody look effeminate. Like the whole thing with Deathstroke. I saw the scene that everybody is talking about, and I didn't get it. I was like, why does all of these characters look like bad Final Fantasy knockoffs? Like, this is the shits. Like, this sucks. Now, episode 1, I'll be honest and tell you, it's not that bad. All right. It's a very wholesome depiction of Superman. He's a big lumbering kid who just wants to be good and just help people out. He actually stands up to Lois in the episode when she lies to him about whether they're supposed to be investigating the story or whatever, and they're not supposed to because they're all just interns. And Jimmy is a photographer, and he stands up to her and tells her that you lied to me. We trusted you, and you betrayed our trust. And I'm like, okay, at least he's willing to stand up to her, I guess. But I just get the feeling that even though episode 1 wasn't that bad, you can look at this and tell how bad it's going to get. Like some people have said, like, oh, it's very wholesome, and it is. If you've got kids, it might be a wholesome depiction of Superman. It's not super violent. It's not sexual. But they do have the Burger King Kids Club race diversity thing. They've got this thing where on the villain side, there's buzz cut villain haircuts or whatever, and she's the boss. And the big tough guy who is like her right hand man or whatever is panicking and anxious all the time. And that's like what the hell? Are you serious? This small woman has like this super tough voice and calm down, we got this. And the big guy's like, oh my God, what's going to happen if so-and-so comes in here, man? What are we going to do? And it's like, oh, shit. Oh, hell no. 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 The fake anime vibes and everything. I'm like, bro. They also introduced a new kid named Flip, who is a black child. She is a girl, but she looks like Riley from the Boondocks. So she wears like jeans and gym shoes, and she's got like a hoodie and all this kind of stuff. And she represents the News Kid Legion, which is some organization that her and her friends have created, where they deliver papers for the Daily Planet, but they also make their own newspaper, and they're the source for Lois's story and all this kind of stuff. And she was kind of cute. She wasn't very annoying, but I can see how she could get annoying. And it's sad because you want to sit back and watch this thing and actually maybe enjoy it, but there are so many things in the story, from the art decisions to some of the character stuff that they dumped in there. How about, I think that this new generation of people, they may like this because it doesn't denigrate Superman, but it does literally everything else. It turns everybody into some kind of soft, pliable, you know, fake anime, sugar gumdrops. It's a little too sweet. And then, of course, some of the male characters and female characters, the design of them is very awkward. The Deathstroke stuff was crazy. That was just crazy. Like that's just crazy. I'm not watching episode 2. I wasn't that offended by episode 1, but I can't suggest anybody watch episodes 1 or 2. My thing is, if you want a little bit more of a mature Superman, you probably shouldn't watch this. This is a very immature Clark who's trying to figure out who he is, who doesn't know who he is, doesn't know why his powers are what they are. He's a big lug that wants to help. Lois actually likes him. It's like love at first sight between the two of them. So he's not gay, but there's still time to to change that. But it's clear that Lois Lane is going to be dragging him around by his tie, and pushing him into danger and all this kind of stuff. And he's not going to have any agency. And they didn't even utilize any real villains or noticeable villains in the first episode. So the villains are basically created specifically for this series, at least in the first episode. So we don't know how they're going to animate up Brainiac or Mongol or anything like that. Well, I know a lot of people checked out when they saw the Superman magical girl transformation. I would say if you can get past that, you probably are the kind of person who watches this show. I got past it to watch episode 1, and I didn't think it was that great, if we're being honest. It wasn't as bad as what was that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle show they just did? Rise of the TMNT. I couldn't even watch an episode of that. It was that bad. It offended me on every single goddamn level. I was pissed. I was pissed even knowing that existed. I hate that show. And I didn't watch one episode of it. Just from the trailers, I hated everything about it. From the fat, lazy Splinter to Raphael being a leader and having all this stuff on his back, and they got magical ninjutsu powers. I'm like, oh no. Oh, these people don't get it. It's like, just Superman being a transformation doesn't make sense. It's like, we know that it's anime infused, but just because it's anime infused doesn't mean you change the nature of the character. Superman doesn't transform into Superman. He is Superman. Like, that's the whole point of the gimmick. He is who he is 100% of the time. He doesn't need to transform into Superman. He doesn't need to transform his clothes into the leotard and the cape. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. It's a little too soft for me. It reminded me a lot. I didn't know that it was created by the same people who made the He-Man show. But now that I know that, I will definitely not be watching any more of this stuff. But I decided to give it a try. I didn't get it. I don't see how it was visually appealing. I mean, the action scenes were crisp, I guess. And that was the thing that people really liked about the Rise of the TMNT is they actually liked the action set pieces because they gave the boys powers, and it really did a good job of animating the fight scenes. So whenever you argue with people about Rise of the TMNT, they'll post like a fight scene. But when the characters are so far off model that the characters are completely different than you would ever accept him to be anywhere else. It literally doesn't make any sense. And I even try to take people's at their word and saying like, oh no, the rise of the TMNT is about the characters becoming the characters that you know and love. And I'm looking at this and saying like, how does Splinter go from being a fat layabout to being the wise old master? Why does he have to become that? Why isn't he just already that? You know, like the boys, like for starters, they're teenagers. So what teen are we talking about here where they're going to grow into the roles that we know them already to be in? How can that work? Like that, your teenage years are literally 5 years. You're either 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, or 18. Literally that's it. And we know that from most series, they're somewhere between 16 and 18. Because you can, once you date Donatello, I'm sorry, Donatello, but Leonardo, you can pretty much take a wild guess at how old the other ones are. And most TMNT, Leonardo is around 16 or 17. So that means Mikey is probably what, 14, 15, or whatever the case may be. He's the youngest of the bunch. Sometimes they even have him as young as 13. But how do you grow from in such a short amount of time for being such an idiot character and so stupid and having almost none of the character traits that you're known for? You grow into that. That doesn't make sense. So I didn't buy into the rise of the TMNT. Well, it's a prequel and Fat Black April and all that kind of stuff, which is what they're going to do in this new movie. Oh, oh boy. But the new Superman show, it's not very good. I don't like the animation. I don't like how it makes the male characters look. It all just looks like Steven's Universe. Now, it doesn't have the Cal art style of Steven Universe, but the masculinized characters don't look masculine. They all look soft and girly. And you can look and say that a lot of women worked on this show. Like just from the opening credits, you can look and see that a lot of women worked on this show. So, and then you listen to the voice acting, and you don't get a real masculine tone of voice out of Clark. He doesn't have a commanding tone or a smooth tone or an even tone or anything like that. He's like anxious, constantly worried about what he's going to do. And it tries to make him wholesome. And it does. It successfully makes him wholesome. But it makes him wholesome in a way that also sort of emasculates. It's very strange to explain that because you only watch one episode. But I can tell you already, I can see it. It's not going to get much better than it is right now. I think, and plus, when it comes to a lot of these ESG, SJW shows, is they start out in a non-offensive way, but the more you watch it, the worse it gets. So episode 1 or 2 is supposed to be soft, get you to watch it because you think, oh, it's not too bad. Then episode 4 or 5, it starts getting shitty. Episode 6 and 7, it gets real bad. That's when all the other stuff starts to come in. It's very subversive, where the idea is to trick you into watching the series. But I watched episode 1, and I have the strength to not watch episode 2. Especially after I saw the Magical Girl transformation. I'm like, oh no. Oh no. It was super. It sucked. Prince Ali says, I think that's the point. You're not supposed to look like you have a secret identity. If Superman was more macho, who wouldn't say Clark wasn't Superman? I don't think it's that. It's the lack of, what's the word I'm looking for? Chutzpah, I think. The lack of balls in Superman. Like he comes across like, a big lug, that just, needs a hug and point him in the right direction and he'll do the right thing and all this kind of stuff. And it's fine. And I can even say, like, in episode 1, they made fun of him a little bit. Like, he has, they put a bib on him, you know. Oh, he loves donuts, the big guy. And so we get him a donut bib. He's like, oh no. And then he's kind of embarrassed and humiliated and like, oh, well, you guys saw me with the bib on. Oh, no. Oh, shucks. And it's like, okay. He's completely and totally lacking in confidence and, or whatever. I don't know. But it's also, it don't fit his age, I don't think. Like, if he was younger and sort of waffling like that with his confidence and everything, it might have made a little bit more sense. But him being apparently a college student, uh, I don't know. So he's talking about what, early 20s? I don't know. The dude's a gigantic wall of muscle who can fly, and apparently he could fly for a long time. So that means he's been doing this stuff for a while already. Unless he hit puberty and grew like Super Mario with a mushroom. Because in early in the episode, you see him flying and he's a skinny kid. And next time you see him, he's out jogging like Little Mac and Mike Tyson Punch Out, and he's a big wall of muscle. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I hate that. I don't hate it. I shouldn't have said I hated it. I don't hate it. I just don't see the appeal, and I don't like the animation style, and I don't like how it makes the character look, and I don't like the design of other characters. But Jimmy Olsen is not. He's not as embarrassing or as an effeminate as people have said he was. Again, I didn't see episode 2. Maybe he turned into a real twink in episode 2. I don't know. But the twinkification of everybody, where everybody's super slender with no muscle definition, no bass in their voice, no confidence. I don't like that. I don't like that depiction of males. So I'm not a big fan of it. Like the most confident persons in the show is Lois Lane and the buzz cut female villain. Like they're uber confident in who they are. And people who are twice their size are like panicking and anxious and waffling and everything. It's kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't like it. I can see where it's going. So, WG Phil says, new trend is a black autist that could be gay or dating a semi-abusive girl boss. That's where the villain is. She's hyper competent, buzz cut to the side of the head, black female villain. One of her right hand men was this huge wall of muscle who was panicking and asking her, what do we do if something bad happens? It's like, shouldn't you have a beard, bro? You should know this question by now. If it was one thing, if it was a kid or something like that, I don't know. Just, and it feels like to me, even through the title, and it's probably going to be on a Lois Lane centered show. Not that I have a problem with that. It's just that I feel like I'm being set up. So even if this show turns out to be somewhat decent on the front of it's not going to be too offensive to Superman, it's going to at least hit you with everything else. So there's going to be some gay best friends and twinkification of some villains and, poking some fun at people that you probably shouldn't poke fun at. And I prefer a little bit more of a serious presentation to Superman. So I don't know. That's just me though. So I didn't really care for it. That was me personally. Since Goku is less buff in Dragon Ball Super, did he get twinkified? Now that, believe it or not, a lot of people do feel that way, because part of the draw for Dragon Ball was that these dudes were like high definition killers, Like you look at the Saiyans and they just rippling with muscles and that high testosterone. But then you get to Super and you don't really get the big high, muscle content anymore. the amount of battle damage they take, where sometimes in Dragon Ball Z, they're fighting whole battles with no shirt on, just muscles and everything just going at it. You don't get a lot of that in Super. So a lot of people when it first started, they did call it twinkification, especially Gohan, because Gohan's arms was like skinny, like super skinny. And so a lot of people feel like Dragon Ball went backwards with Dragon Ball Super in terms of muscle definition and everything. So I wouldn't say that he got twinkified because he's not that skinny, but he's less built than he used to be. Like what people really liked about Goku and all those guys were they were big, bulging, muscular guys. Now they're more lean martial artists, you know. Lethal said, I'm tired of Clark Kent and Peter Parker working at newspapers. The thing is, they've given Pete other jobs, they just don't stick. You know, they made him a teacher, and it didn't stick. They made him an inventor, it didn't stick. There's other things they could do with Peter, they just choose not to. Superman, I'm not that sure. What the hell? He could just be a reporter. Why not? Like saying says one of the many reasons why I like Broly. Dude was a killer. Yeah, and he still is. He still looks like the traditional Dragon Ball character because he is big and he's muscular. You know, everybody else in the series have become skinnier. Even Piccolo. Everybody else has gotten skinnier because it makes them easier to draw and it's more consistent and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what I don't know. It's just I get why people say they don't like the new designs. And I tend to agree with them. I like the old designs too. Prince Ali said, I think Superman should be lighthearted with dark themes. Batman fits darker subject matters. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I think Superman is the theme of Superman should always be hope. And there is a right thing to do. And Superman is going to do the right thing to do, and you can always trust him to do the right thing. But when you have the animation, the way that they have it, and the characterization and the way that they have it, if he was a superhero, that's fine, but he doesn't come across as a confident superhero or a competent one. You know, this seems to be one long, or at least the first two episodes, probably going to be his origin. He tries to figure out who he is and how he should be in the world, and that's fine. But when the voice actor doesn't have a heroic tone of voice, doesn't have a commanding presence. He just comes across as a big, muscular, lisping twink. And it's very unfortunate because if they'd have gave him a really good voice actor, it might have come across better off. But no, I don't like that show. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not going to be able to get over Magical Girl Superman. I'm not going to be able to get over that. Not going to be able to make it work. WG Phil says being a photographer kind of works because they can use their superhero identity to do photos. For Spider-Man, yes. For Spider-Man, that absolutely works. And plus, him being a freelancer works because he can work on his own time, as opposed to having to punch a clock and be somewhere between 9 and 5 or whatever. It makes having a job that's flexible like that helps. That's why superheroes don't typically work in an office. You want to be able to give your superhero an opportunity to travel and to move to and fro, of his own free will. If he has to be on the shop floor at 9 o'clock and he's not there because he's out saving some little girl, theoretically he should be fired, right? So keeping him as a gig worker or not giving him a job at all is usually the best way of handling these situations. Prince Ali says, should Batman look slender for a more creepy and scary look or bulky for a macho and masculine look? I think that DC, when they drew Batman in the animated series and he was just as big as Superman, that was probably a bit much. But They also drew Green Lantern, and he was that big too. They just went for wide body, big backs, wide chests, as a traditional superhero look. But Super Batman is a peak human, you know, peak human physique. He should he should be muscular, clearly, because he's a guy who works out. He's a guy who trains his body. He knows martial arts, but he shouldn't be shaped like an NBA player. Like if he was lean, he would lose his intimidation factor. So he has to have some gain on him. He's got to have some bulk on him. But he also covers his body completely, and he has the cape that covers himself up. So he can't be too big, you know. So I think he shouldn't look like Bane, but he should be a sort of very fit, muscular man. He should look like he works out a lot, more than normal, but he shouldn't look like a bodybuilder. Let's put it like that. He should have functional strength. He should look like a guy who can lift his own weight, like a really good soldier. Think of a really solidly built soldier. That's how Batman should look. Square jawed, decent shoulder length, muscles, all that kind of stuff. But he shouldn't be like huge and hulking. There's no need for that. In some cases, Superman doesn't even need to be that big because his power is internal. Like he just is who he is. So genetically, he would come out a certain way. But Batman shouldn't be like huge and muscular or anything. Lee Thelzy says it's weird how modern writers think making women adopt masculine attributes is appealing on a mainstream level. Yeah, it really is embarrassing, isn't it? It's truly a mess that people think that shit works. People don't understand, man. You can have traditionally female traits and still be heroic. You don't have to be masculinized. It doesn't work. If anything, it's off-putting. And this is the positive thing about Black Cat and her depiction in Spider-Man is when she got her power, she didn't automatically become girl boss. She was still caring. She was still soft. She was still, who she was. She just now had the ability to do something about the bad situations that she was in. She has the power now to actually want to be partners with Spider-Man and spend time with him if she wanted to. She has the ability to try to help Michael Morbius now if she wants to, as opposed to not having that ability before. But giving these characters these masculine traits where all of a sudden they're a take charge female girl boss is ridiculous, bro. We don't, and people don't like that. The kind of people who do like that, there's not enough of them to keep what you do as a success, And I have a problem writing it too because I always look at how somebody like Frank Miller writes like his femme fatales, and they're still very soft and sexy women, but they're dangerous. And that's the thing that I always liked is that you could be soft and you could be sexy, but you could also be dangerous. I don't know how many of you saw the movie La Femme Nikita. I watched that movie. I was going to talk about it, but I decided to talk about Spider-Man instead. But the movie La Femme Nikita plays into that, where she's dealing with that work-life balance, where she can be sort of soft and sentimental with her fiance and her husband, but she also has to be, stone cold killer at her job. And then there's a time where those two things are meshing together, and she ends up, still being a woman, not turning into super masculine, hyper competent male killer, So it's just it's not great. Lee Thelzy said maybe it's because ever since 2016 I've been jaded with mainstream news, so seeing these heroes in a profession filled with propagandists is incongruous for me now. I understand that. That makes sense. Part of it is because so many reporters and stuff like that are basically activists now. And I know that they did a comic book series with Lois Lane. Essentially, what she was an activist reporter. which is really eye rolling. It's like, okay, it's time to put them on a pedestal. All of a sudden, the journalists, they dig for the truth, and you're always being called fake news by those in power. You're like, okay, sure. Prince, at least for someone like Wonder Woman, it works because she's been training and fighting since childhood. Someone like Chun-Li works too because that's her entire gimmick in Street Fighter games. Yeah, but Chun-Li is still sort of a soft feminine character. You know, Chun-Li isn't like Ryu. She's not girl version of Ryu who's like dedicated her entire life to fighting. Like Chun-Li uses fighting and training to supplement what she actually does for a living, which is, she's an Interpol agent. So she's sort of a special agent and she needs to know how to defend herself. And she just happens to be a very good fighter with very powerful legs. But she's still a very feminine woman. So you could do something like what they did in the Street Fighter animated movie, where she's attacked in the shower by Vega or whatever. She can defend herself. She can fight him off. And she did that while taking a lot of damage. So it didn't bury Vega too much to get beat up by a girl, because she's a highly competent girl. She's strong in the legs and stuff like that. And he's sort of a effeminate male. So it works out that he could be the guy that gets beat up by Chun-Li. But Chun-Li is never depicted as being a sort of butch girl boss character. I've never seen a depiction of Chun-Li in that way. So it's hard to. I know they probably would try to do that now. Well, like they did with Sonya Blade, where they basically masculinized the shit out of Sonya in Mortal Kombat. Like she was already like military and all that kind of stuff, but now Sonya is like, she's like a commander or a captain or something like that, and Ronda Rousey is doing her voice, and she's got this cupcake husband or ex-husband or whatever, Johnny Cage. She's kicking him around and shit. Like, get the fuck out of here. Who the hell wants to buy that? I don't want to see that. All right, it's 10:30. Let's start wrapping this thing up. Any last thoughts on Spider-Man, My Adventures with Superman, or anything else? Try to wrap this thing up within the next 4 or 5 minutes. Because I'm thirsty and it's hot. I told you I had to turn off everything to do these videos, and I'm starting to get hot. All right. Any last words? 10 seconds. I thought people would be like more into it. Wait, what's happening here? Oh, shit. Okay, there we go. Watch Spectacular Spider-Man next. I'm probably going to end up watching Batman next. I'm probably going to end up watching Batman, if we're being honest. I'm going to try to finish Spider-Man before I go to bed, though. I got to get up early. Not really. So, I haven't watched Batman the animated series all the way through yet. So, once I watch Spider-Man all the way through, I watch Batman all the way through. I've already seen X-Men numerous times because I have it on DVD, so I don't necessarily need to go back and watch that all the way through. But I definitely want to watch Batman. And then maybe I'll do Superman and then Justice League. All right. I like 90s Spider-Man, but I didn't care for the ending. Will you review the Hulk or Fantastic Four show after X-Men? I think I have the Fantastic Four animated show on DVD, and I didn't get through the first episode. I bought the DVD without knowing whether it was good or not. And through the animation, and I barely got through episode 1. So we'll see how that works out. I didn't know the Hulk had one, so maybe I'll check it out. I'll see what it's like. But I'll let you know how the ending of Spider-Man the Animated Series is when I get there. Anyway, thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and peace out. I watched a